Hi everyone, this is Sunette here in this hangout to discuss the bad words. And by bad words, I mean, the words we more emotionally or negatively experience and also oftentimes judge and resist, which is words such as anxiety, doubt, and stress. The questions that emerged from many individuals is, but what about these words? The words we know are creating emotional, negative, or just bad experiences within ourselves and our thoughts and our, our inner experiences. What about those words? So this is what this hangout is about tonight. And why it is important to also understand your relationship with the bad words. And I do say bad words because in this hangout, you will also understand how the bad words are actually not so bad, but actually a stepping stone to assisting and supporting you in redefining and living or better and more supportive words for yourself and your relationships and your everyday life experience. I mean, it's interesting in observing even myself in my younger years and looking at the words, and this is what we're going to be focusing on, these three words: anxiety, doubt, and stress. And like how many times in my life and in moments and in my everyday life experience, I kind of justified, why being so anxious and stressed and doubtful was valid, was okay. And it was primarily because I, at that time, didn't know or even have the capacity to understand that I had the ability to actually question my relationship to anxiety, to stress, to doubt. And within that questioning, understand these words and who I become when I allow these words and the experiences within them to take over myself, my words, my body language. And then from there, be able to ask myself, but is this how I want to respond to this person or this moment or this situation? Or is there actually a better way? Is there a different way? Is there a different word, an expression, an experience, a presence inside myself that I can become in my words and in my behavior that's defined within a different word than anxiety, stress, or doubt? All right. So for any of you listening to this video, if you at any time within your daily life experience, or if you have any memories of when you've gone into anxiety or doubt or stress, all right. So the first thing that I want you to have a look at is how you experience yourself when you essentially embody those words, when you become those words. Meaning, maybe just to clarify as well, let's first start it from here. Let's say you walk your everyday life experience and playing out a scenario where you go into anxiety or doubt or stress in one day, all right? And this is also what is so significant within this process that we're walking with soul, which is to start identifying, start defining, start getting to know the words that you become in any given moment within your day. Because if you can start doing that, identifying when you're going into anxiety or when you're going into doubt or when you're going into stress, when you know those moments and you can feel that emotion, you can see yourself change in your thoughts and in your behavior, that actually empowers you. Because the moment you can identify anxiety or doubt or stress, right? When you can identify it, that's the moment where you can take that deep in breath and out breath, take a step back and ask yourself, hey, do I want to live anxiety in this moment? Do I want to live stress in this moment? Do I want to live doubt in this moment? Is this the word that I would like to define me in this moment? But not only that, is there a different word that I can live, that I can embody, that I can express within my words and my behavior in this moment that will change me, that will change the moment, and it will change my relationship to another person? All right. So that is what we're going to be having a look at here within this video. Essentially showing you that these words are not necessarily bad. They're not negative. The only reason that we essentially have a negative or bad or judgmental or reactive relationship to these words is because a part of us knows that these words are creating experiences inside ourselves, in our thoughts, in our words, and our deeds, that more often than not create consequences. Consequences meaning just really unpleasant experiences. So let me, from here, walk through each one of these examples, anxiety, doubt, and stress, in even personal experiences that I've gone through throughout my life, and share with you, how just understanding how these words actually supported me to change myself, changed my entire outlook on the words that I initially judged or reacted to or perceived to be bad. All right, so first example is anxiety. Now, when it came to social situations, and especially also taking responsibility, responsibility meaning, anything that I felt like where I could not in any way whatsoever take responsibility for it. It was just way too much for me. I would go into this very, very anxious state inside myself. So social situations, lots of people and responsibility and lots of that caused anxiety within me. And, it was like, I sat down with myself and I looked at, so many memories in my past of, I kept on just reacting in anxiety when I was with a lot of people or taking on an immense amount of responsibility, just always anxiety, anxiety, anxiety. And within that, I could see how, my thoughts would go to, you can't do this, you're not good enough, you're not prepared enough, this in relation to the responsibilities. And then social anxieties was, I'm not pretty enough, I don't look good enough. And then my mind would go to comparison and competition and, eventually lead me to a point of just wanting to actually shy away from all these people because of all the comparisons and self-judgments and insecurities and things that would come up. So, there was like this moment where I sat down with myself and I was like, but do I want to respond like this to social anxieties and taking responsibility every single time? The question I asked myself is, do I want to live the rest of my life looking back at social, environments, so many people taking responsibility, and just, at the end of my life, looking back and saying, oh, I just reacted to anxiety all the time, which led me to give up or just like walk away and not participate. I was like, girl, what are you doing? And, just seeing that. So that is the first step that I would like everyone to do for yourself. Just have a look at anxiety. Anxiety is like that really intense, it's got almost like an electrical current inside your solar plexus. Oh, it's like, and you just want to, you feel like your whole body is shaking when you're in anxiety. And obviously me, and I'm sure so many of you as well, are very good at like trying to hide it, where you're like, no, I'm okay, I can handle this. But like in your head and in your emotions, you're like, oh my God, I want to get away. that's anxiety. That's my definition of anxiety. Then you must have a look at what is anxiety to you. The first step of understanding the bad words, the negative words, the words you react to, is first getting to know them. So my first suggestion to you is to have a look at asking yourself the question, what is anxiety? When do I become anxious? That you need to identify. So even right now, or you can just have a listen to this video and then replay it again, but make a list for yourself of when and where and towards whom do you react in anxiety towards. Okay, so for me it was social situations and responsibilities. But once I asked myself that question, I'm like, do I really want to get to the end of my life and say, nah, I just reacted in anxiety to social situations and responsibilities? I was like, no. I mean, I would want to see who I am and who I can become beyond the anxiety. So then what I did, so it's like, okay, in social situations with so many people, what word would I like to live? Would I like to be? Would I like to become? How would I like to be? And the words that came through was comfortable, at ease, sociable, an extrovert, expressive, so that's just naming a few. But it's like so many new words came through in relation to who I'd like to be and what I'd like to be within a social situation and within responsibilities as well. The words that came through in what I would rather like to be than being anxious all the time is independent, dependable, specific, trustworthy. So it's like so many new words came through, and just in doing that one thing for myself, it showed me that, anxiety was keeping me from exploring the potential that I have within myself of just creating myself and developing myself, and doing this through one thing, and that is words. So then over time, what I did was slowly but surely practice, really with awareness. Whenever I was in a social situation and this anxiety would come up that would cause me to want to just run away, I would go, no, I want to be comfortable in this social event. So then consciously, with awareness, I would practice being more comfortable. I would slow down my thoughts. I would slow down my emotions with breathing. And I would live and embody this word comfortability that I redefined for myself. And how I redefined it was just being relaxed in my body, making sure that my body is relaxed. Because another thing that anxiety does is it really tenses up your whole body, like, and so I would breathe and relax and slow down. And then within that comfortability, I also defined it in a way of just allowing myself to listen to people, to get to know them, to stand in different circles and different groups and hear what they have to say, and just make sure that I'm practicing being comfortable as well as just listening. And as I'm listening, if there's something I can add or say or share, then I would. And slowly but surely, over time, I started redefining and living the words comfortability, being an extrovert, expressing myself, being honest with myself, getting to know other people. So that was really an extraordinary process. So whenever my anxiety came up within any social situation, I would immediately go back to reminding myself of, girl, you do not want to spend the rest of your life just being anxious when you're in a social environment. Come on. What more can you discover and live and experience about yourself if you start redefining and living new words? So here, this is an example of how a bad word or a word we tend to react to negatively or judge can actually assist and support you within your process of redefining and living new words. So from transcending that context of anxiety in a social situation, I mean, I realized, and I sat back and I looked at, I would have always just been trapped in this anxiety, and I wouldn't have ever discovered that I can actually be comfortable with myself. I can actually express myself. I can laugh. I can get to know other people. I can just, break my boundaries and my walls and start reaching out there and just sitting down with a person I don't even know and just get to know them. So, I mean, this is one of the things that I'm really grateful for this process. And this is what I would like each one of you to take with you. That, like, for example, anxiety or doubt or stress. Doubt and stress we're going to get to in a moment, but that you don't need to have these words and your definition and your living and your experience of these words limit you. There's actually so much more beyond these words if you would just walk through them. And what I mean by walk through them is, it's like, imagine the word is like a waterfall, and you've been in a cave, and it's like you've been in this cave locked, and this waterfall is anxiety. And this waterfall is so massive, it's so big, but the moment you break through it and you walk through that hole and you see this whole world in front of you, that's the experience that you gain from transcending a bad word, essentially, right? So what I would like everyone to do, I'm going to walk through 2 more examples, which is doubt and stress, and each one of them you can walk through a similar format. So firstly, you need to identify, where in my life do I go into the bad word, the word I judge as negative or bad, such as anxiety or doubt or stress, and get to know those words. I mean, one thing you've got to realize is that the more you react to words, the more you judge them, the more you resist them, the more you're separating yourself from them. I mean, I also had this interesting realization within my process, which is like, I'm having these anxiety experiences inside of me, but at the same time, I'm judging them and I'm reacting to them. And I am like throwing this negative veil over them. But I mean, they're coming up inside of me. So therefore, it's like I'm just throwing like this negative, really bad emotional connotation to things that's going on inside of myself, which creates like a separation from me. The one most important gift that you can give to yourself is to, rather than judging or resisting or reacting to things that's going on inside yourself, do one thing: understand them. What do I mean by understanding? I mean, rather, when the anxiety comes up, don't go, oh my God, this is so bad, I'm in anxiety. Oh no, I shouldn't be in anxiety, or oh my goodness, I'm in anxiety. No. I'm not feeling anxious. No, not at all. Going into that kind of a denial phase. Rather than doing that, understand it. It's a part of you that's coming up inside yourself. So when the anxiety comes up, just go, all right, goodness, I'm going into an anxious reaction here. Take a deep in-breath, a deep out-breath, slow down. Just look at, why is this anxiety here? Why am I anxious? And then most of the time, you'll realize it's because you haven't actually learned a different way in how to approach any given situation. For example, with my social anxiety experiences, I realized that I didn't have any other techniques or methods or ways of how to deal with or handle social situations. Like, I've kind of grown up in my life, and no one's ever guided me or told me or shared with me like how to deal with meeting new people, or how to communicate with them, how to get to know them, how to express yourself, how to be yourself, how to share yourself, like none of that. So anxiety was kind of like the first thing that came up inside myself, and that's what I learned to trust. So from there, I always just reacted in anxiety to social situations. And that's also another interesting reference that you can use for yourself. When you go into anxiety, for example, that is just a reminder of the fact that you haven't known a different way. You haven't known a different approach, a different starting point, a different you in how to approach a situation, a person, or an experience. All right. So here, again, just as a framework reference that you can use for yourself, is identify where and towards who and in what moments in your life do you go into anxiety or doubt or stress. And then ask yourself, okay, what other words or different words can I live in these moments so that I don't have to go into anxiety or stress or doubt, but instead live a word and become a word that supports me. All right. So for me, my first word when it came to social anxiety was comfortability. And I didn't initially even speak to people or put myself out there and just start talking to people I don't know. It was a slow but sure process of releasing myself from the anxiety and living comfortability. So I used, whenever anxiety would come up within me, I would remind myself, okay, no, go back to comfortability. Focus on you being comfortable. So it's just a slow but sure process of self-change, which is what we also discussed in the previous two videos, in how this process of self-change through words will be just that, a process. And you've got to have that patience and dedication and commitment within yourself to change. All right. So for this particular section of the Hangout, if you have any questions, do ask when it comes to anxiety, social anxiety, and changing yourself in relationship to it. And then in the meantime, I'll continue with stress. So stress, also one of those really bad words where that when you go into stress, it creates so much consequence on a physical level, an emotional level, and also a mental level. So for me as well, whenever I went into stress, I defined stress first for myself. I first got to know, okay, what is stress? What happens when I go into stress? How do I physically change? How do I mentally change? How do I change in the experience of myself? And I first wrote down that. So again, a reminder, and you can walk this particular section of the video with me as well, is to write down and write out, like, when it is that you go into stress. What happens to you when you go into stress? What happens to your body? What happens to your experience of yourself? What happens to your inner experience within you, your mental, just everything. You've got to get to know what happens when you go into, for example, anxiety or stress. Get to know yourself is always the first step. You've got to understand it, because for anything to change and to really change, we first need to understand what it is that we need to change in the first place. So if we keep on reacting to or judging or resisting the bad words or the bad experiences within ourselves, we're never going to get to a space or a place within us where we can really look at it and look into it and go, okay, I see you for what you are. And from here, I'm going to now look at how I can possibly change it. Okay. So stress for me, I realized happened when I was thinking about too much, way too much. It's like my head inside this little tiny space, there were like a million things I was thinking about, worrying about, planning, scheduling, trying to get finished, priorities, responsibilities, obligations. So it was like my head the size that it is now was like almost 10 times bigger. That's what it felt like. And that caused a lot of stress inside myself. And then I would even walk through my day just constantly worrying, anxious, irritable, frustrated, all the consequences that stress created for me. And I would try and get to everything and everyone in one day, but it would never work out quite as well. So in understanding my relationship with stress, that's the first thing I did. I asked myself, okay, what happens when I become stressed? Why do I become stressed? Who am I when I become stressed? I first wrote that down, and then I just sat back. I'm like, no, let's have a look at what different word can I live to assist and support me in my experience within myself and my everyday life experience. So then I don't want to live like this, day in and day out with all these things in my head that I need to get to and tend to, all these people and responsibilities, obligations, and the future and the past, and oh my goodness, I was like, no. Because I mean, even physically, I could just feel and see that I was becoming really exhausted and tired, and just at the end of the day, like finished, and most of the time within this stressed state, I would very seldom even be able to get to anything or get to anyone, because you walk your day and then new things come up and other things come up and other people want your attention. So it was quite a challenge living in stress all the time. So I sat down with myself and I asked myself, what other words would I like to live? Would I like to redefine and live for myself? And from stress, I got the words priority, stability, more time management, dedication, slowing down, and again, so many different words came up that I rather wanted to live in my everyday life. And so what I did was, everything that caused me stress, I created a solution for it. And that's also a very important thing within your process in your everyday life. When it comes to, for example, the words we've walked now, which is anxiety and stress, is to realize that the problems that anxiety create, or the problems that stress create, you can from there also source your solutions. Like, for example, the anxiety was caused by social situations, and then that kind of became the problem. And so then I asked myself, okay, what's the solution? What's the solution for me when it comes to social situations? What solution do I want to be, become, and live? All right, so the same with the stress. The stress was caused by me, like, piling all my everyday responsibilities and obligations into my head and stressing about it. So then I asked myself, all right, what's the solution to these problems that was coming up in relation to stress? And the solutions was time management, structuring my day, taking things one thing at a time, slowing down, asking for help. Oh, that's also another thing that I tended to do that created a lot of stress inside myself. It's like, no, I can do everything alone by myself. I don't need anything or anyone. Meanwhile, I could use, or I could have used, a bit of support and assistance and help from other people. So let's also round up these two words, anxiety and stress. And so whenever I went into stress in my day, I would take a breath, slow down, and ask myself, did you prioritize your time effectively? Can you get to this now? Or can you structure it in for later? Or can you ask someone else for help here? So again, the word stress, which was initially a really bad word, creating that negative, uncomfortable, unpleasant experiences inside myself, became a reference point that I used for me of when it was that I didn't use or live the words, my new words, which was to prioritize and ask for support and assistance from other people, right? So again, I'm sure within this video thus far, you're getting an idea of how the negative or bad words we tend to judge or react to or resist can actually become an extraordinary gift within your process. Because one of the main reasons we react to emotions in things like stress or anxiety is because we haven't known any other way. We haven't been taught any other way. We haven't realized that there is a different way. And that different way is through redefining ourselves within words. So just ask yourself, do I want to continue living anxiety? Do I want to continue living the stress? No. What different words, what new words, what better words can I live and redefine for myself that I can practice becoming in these moments that will support me, support my relationship to another person or a situation, and just transform my experience of myself and my life. All right. So let's then have a look at last example, which is doubt. Now, doubt is quite a complex, tricky one, because to share with you an example with myself is I used to experience doubt when it came to making decisions. Oh my goodness. I was really bad at making decisions because, you've got all these fears and worries and things coming up inside yourself. Is this the right one? Is this the best choice? What if I go this way or that way? And wow, that just really plummeted me into an emotional experience of doubt. And this came to even simple decisions of taking it to a more subtle example of when people ask me, hey, do you want to go out or, grab a coffee or do this and that? I would go into doubt, because I would be thinking about so many different things, so many other things, should I, shouldn't I, that I would go into a doubtful emotional reaction within myself. And within this experience, this emotional experience of doubt, I was like, it like becomes exhausting, when I looked at these three words in my life, okay, anxiety, stress, and doubt, and all the times that I would emotionally react as those words in, towards people or in situations and things like that, it's exhausting. Like, why did I not ever really look at these words and when I become them and why I become them? Like, really, every single time when it came to making a decision, doubt immediately. And then I again sat back and it's like, I really do not want to be reacting in such an extensive experience of doubt every single time. So again, I defined doubt and myself in my relationship with doubt. I got to get to know myself when it came to this word and this experience. I wrote it out for myself. And this is also the first step that you can do, writing. Writing is an extraordinary tool to map out and get to know and understand your experience with words and who you are within the words you're living now, even the bad ones. But I can say that if you start writing out the bad words and getting to know yourself within the bad words, and from there start redefining and living new words, better words, you will learn and experience and discover so much more about yourself. All right. So then from doubt, I was like, okay, from this moment onwards, I'm rather, instead of going into doubt and emotionally experiencing that doubtful experience within myself, I'm going to redefine doubt in just a double check with myself, just a check-in. So a check-in meaning I got to get to know myself within the word doubt in a way where I realized that I was only reacting in doubt when there was a little bit of uncertainty in relation to some information or data and things like that, or people or time and schedules when it came to making a decision. So whenever I experience doubt, I would use that as a cross-reference for myself that, okay, maybe I should just double check on things and cross-reference and ask some more questions or check in with myself or other people. So, now, from now on, whenever in my life I go into doubt, that emotional experience for a moment, I know, okay, so I must be more specific. I must cross-reference, I must double check, must be more specific, reinvestigate. So those are the new words that I define for myself with changing my relationship to doubt. All right. So for everyone that has joined this hangout this evening, I am giving a couple of minutes for any questions that you might have in relation to the words anxiety and doubt and stress. And while I'm rounding off this particular video, so to take with you for this evening, the one most important thing that I would like you to see, realize, and understand within yourself is that these words are not bad. They're simply a stepping stone to showing you that there's actually more words beyond these words that you can redefine and live that'll assist and support you within who you are in your self-development, your self-growth, your self-potential, right? So again, going over the structure of what to do whenever you're going into anxiety or stress or doubt, right? Get to know those words and who you are within those words. Understand them. Understand yourself within them so that you can see, when am I going into doubt or stress or anxiety? And then from there, you ask yourself, okay, I'm going into anxiety in social situations. I'm going to stress when it comes to my time management. I'm going into doubt when it comes to decisions. So what other words do I want to live and be and become when it comes to social situations, time management, and making decisions? And then from there, you write down the new words that you'd like to live. Like for me, the social situations or experiences were comfortability, confidence, sharing, expressing myself. In time management, it was being more specific, more diligent, asking for support, reaching out. And within making decisions, it was trusting myself, being more specific, cross-referencing, checking again, just going over all the information again, So have a look. There are so many new words, new parts of me that I could discover and see and realize and experience just because I allowed myself to understand and walk through and transcend the bad words. Right. So we'll go to here for this hangout for this evening. Everyone who has been participating live, thank you very much for being here. And then to everyone else who may be listening to these videos only after it has been done, more than welcome to ask the questions in the School of Ultimate Living website on Facebook. And looking forward to having your participation in all our future hangouts. Thank you very much.